Hey y'all, this isn't exactly a response to BR Tidwell, but I'm probably going to post this video over to him. I'll let him decide if he wants to expand on it or not. But we were talking about, what makes a good distro? What's user-friendly, what's good, but it's, from the average user point of view, from the non-average user, so on and so forth. And I had a random thought on that just popped in my head, which is, aside from what kind of desktop environment makes the most sense to how your mind works, there's another real key thing that you should look into if you're going to, use Linux as your operating system and your cross thing. And that is the community behind it. Every Linux distro is not just an operating system, but a community. To put it another way, if something goes wrong, that's where you're going to go to get help. Now, most distros maintain a forum, but all forums are not created equal, and all forums are not for the same type of users. Before you really commit to a distro, what would be a good thing to do is, A, see if you can find their help forum on their site, because sometimes you have to be a tech person to even figure out where their forum is. B, once you've located their forum, browse through some of the recent posts. Some of your more user-friendly forums are sorted into what they are. They'll have areas that are designated just for fun, which is a bunch of geeks basically making fun of stuff. They'll have areas that are recommended for help, and it'll be split into categories like general, hardware. Sometimes they divide hardware into laptop hardware and desktop hardware because these can be very different issues. Software, sometimes they'll have specific things, so on and so forth. Pick the type of stuff you usually find broken and go in there and just click on recent posts and see what kind of answers people are getting, see what kind of questions people are asking, and see what kind of answers they're getting. If you're a technical person, then you don't really care because you'll be able to figure out anything out. If you're an average user and you're not a technical person, and the only kind of help you're going to get from this community is open terminal, execute highly complex command, paste highly complex output, but do not place this portion of the output, only this portion of the output, and I will tell you what other complex thing to do, and then you'll have to read through the complex output and figure out the rest yourself. Even if you like that distro, I don't recommend using it, because it ain't going to help you. Not to say you aren't going to find posts like that in every forum, but if that's the general tone of every single post, that means that's geeky persons helping geeky persons, and you're probably not going to get help for just an average little question. All of these forums usually have a rule, which is you should search for your topic before just posting. So, you don't get doubles and so on and so forth. And forums have other rules, like you must post in the proper topic and so on and so forth. The degree to which these rules are anally reinforced also has a real shape on the community. There's anal admins from hell somebody who's just trying to get help, they'll punish them for making an honest mistake. And then there's communities where, they'll give you a little friendly reminder, or they'll say, this has already been covered, but here's the link to where it's already been covered, just in case you couldn't find it. Because a lot of times you post a new topic because you don't realize, you weren't thinking of the right techie word to search for it. And that's an important thing to talk. How helpful is the community? What kind of instructions do they give? Do they give instructions you can follow? Do they tell you to go into terminal every time, or do they tell you, click this, and do that? If you're a user who needs to click this, and do that, and they're telling you to go into terminal, here's the thing I find some forums commit. They'll tell you to go into terminal, and they forget that the average user isn't really sure what terminal is. I'm not kidding. It's the average user never goes into this stuff. It's like anyone who goes into a terminal all the time much prefers a Unix or Linux-based terminal. They hate the Windows one. It's just one of these things that makes their skin crawl. But non-geeky people never go in there. So that's something to consider. Also, a tech tip for people, which I'm sure anybody watching this knows, but just in case you don't, I'm going to include it because I have some time. There are some things that are overlapping, like if you're setting up a network and you need to use ipconfig, for those of you who've done that in Windows and have at least that level of expertise, it is not ipconfig in Linux. It's ifconfig, and ifconfig gives you a lot more than just the IP configuration, also gives you the MAC addresses and everything else, and running that in any terminal program will give you all the info you need. So, peace out all, and that's just something to consider when you go into, if you're actually going to be committing to using Linux. Ciao.